Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Amy Marquez with the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber understands how crazy the last few weeks, month have been. Working remotely, changing your business tactics has been on the forefront of everybody's mind. So this morning, we welcome Rob Garrison from CoNetrix for joining us and leading us through strategies for managing your business with remote employees. We'll have time at the end for a few questions. So if you'll just submit those questions via the chat portion of your screen, that will be great, and we'll address those when Rob is done with his presentation. So with that, Rob has been involved with information technology for over 30 years, and he is the Chief Technology Officer with Kinetics Technology. Rob earned his BBA in Management Information Systems from Texas Tech in 1986 and currently serves as a Chief Technology Officer where he leads hosting, network consulting, and managed services for Kinetics Technology. Rob, thank you for being with us this morning. And with that, if you will tell us a little bit more about yourself if I missed something, and tell us about Kinetics Technology as well.
Great. Thanks for welcoming me. Thanks for everyone who's able to join. I've got some slides here that kind of talk a little bit about Kinetics and who we are. So these are kind of part of our normal templates. So a lot of this has already been covered. The chamber is recording this, so it'll be available after the webinar if someone wants to refer back to it. So who is CoNetrix? Well, CoNetrix is a Lubbock-based company. We've been in business since 1977. We started out as a development company based here under the CompuShare name. That has since been renamed to a different company called Intuitive that develops accounting software. We also have various security consulting practices related to financial institutions. And Kinetics Technology, which is the group that I work with, we provide managed IT services really throughout Texas and the United States, including our cloud hosting products, which we run out of a private data center. So we're really happy to support West Texas and support the community with our various technology services. In total, Kinetics has about 120 employees. Most of those employees are based here in Lubbock, but we do have quite a few remote employees. So a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about in this webinar are things that we implement for our customers, but are also things that we live with day to day, because we've got customers who work remotely from quite a few places around the state and even in other states as well. So we're definitely a remote workforce. So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about here are things that we either implement for our customers or also things that we do in-house. As a company, we have about 1,300 customers, a lot of financial institutions, and a lot of other small businesses as well. In Kinetics Technology, we have about 200 active customers. These are a lot of them are financial institutions, which we believe gives us a good focus on the security considerations for dealing with financial institutions, referring primarily to small to medium-sized community banks. But we have quite a few other customers for Kinetics Technology that we provide IT services for. Accounting, insurance, which brings HIPAA into play, legal, oil and gas. We've got a pretty good presence down in the Permian Basin, which is definitely a challenge right now. Medical and transportation and manufacturing as well. As far as our technology practice, we've got engineers here in Lubbock. We also cover the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Austin, San Antonio area, and in the Midland, Odessa area. We have quite a few affiliations with various vendors, Microsoft, Cisco, and many more than what's listed there that we are actively involved with as far as supporting and implementing those solutions. So this is our kind of our standard disclaimer side. A lot of these opinions are mine, may not be those of CoNetrix as a whole, and then a proprietary statement there. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about what we're going to cover in this webinar. Most of us have been dealing with the challenges, recent challenges, with people working remotely, working from home, and how do you keep your business running, with the various pieces of technology that we use day to day, and how do we continue to service customers? How do we communicate with our coworkers, have meetings, things like that. So those are all challenges that we're dealing with. So I'll cover several of those things. And then as far as technology solutions to help address those challenges, I kind of have that broken up into three main areas, and that's accessing your business applications and your business data when you're working remotely. How do you deal with the phones? Because many businesses are still have customers that call in where they need to be able to provide support or to interface with their customers using the phones. And then how do you do meetings and collaboration? We'll talk about things like Zoom, some other strategies and solutions that might fit for your business. And often the challenge when you're dealing with working remotely is how do you collaborate? You don't have the standing around the water cooler, whether it's a pandemic like now or just if you just have a mobile remote workforce, how do you keep that collaborative or that team building environment when you have people that maybe you don't see maybe just a few times a year. And then lastly, I'll talk about some tips, things that we've learned, like I said, with us supporting ourselves with our remote workforce, and things that we've encountered with other customers as well. Challenges. Obviously the priority for everybody is continuing to service your customers. You've got to be able, with your remote workforce, you've got to be able to service your customers, whether that's answering the phone, whether that's communicating over email, whether that's having audio conferences or meetings, and also accessing your line of business applications. If you're working remotely, you might have an order processing system or some sort of customer relationship management product, or even back end things like doing accounting, processing payroll. All those things come into play there. And then also it's important to think about how to keep everyone productive. And I'm not talking about the distractions about working remotely, although that's certainly a consideration, but really how do you give your employees the tools so that they can do their job effectively? They need to be able to communicate. They need to be able to access your applications, process whatever needs to be processed. So those are all important factors. And then communication, whether it's by email or some sort of messaging platform or audio conferencing or video conferencing like what we're doing today. How do you keep the communication working the way that you want it to work? And really, security is not anything that we can ignore. There are certain risks involved with having remote employees. You have the potential of data, maybe your private confidential data, whether you're a financial institution or you're in healthcare and you've got HIPAA private confidential patient data, or maybe it's just your confidential data for your business. When you have employees working remotely, it's important to make sure you understand where your data lives, where it might be copied to, and how to deal with the potential of the higher risk of having that data end up in places and in the hands of people or organizations where it doesn't belong. So we have several what I'm calling baseline requirements. These are things that hopefully you're doing today, maybe things that you've thought about, but I'm calling these things. These are the items that you really should have anyway, but these are things that really need to be re-examined as you start to support a mobile workforce, or as you set up your technology in order to facilitate remote workers. And the first item here is really not a technical thing. It's really more of a policy thing, and that's what we call an acceptable use policy. Many businesses already have this as a part of their company policies, and that's great if you do. But as it relates to acceptable use, that probably has to be re-examined as it relates to people working remotely. Talking about proper use of company resources, proper handling of customer or company data, how these resources should be used satisfactorily, what are things that are not allowed in those situations. So if you have an acceptable use policy, probably need to take a look at amending that in order to include some of the situations where you have employees and data and application access that are outside the walls of your business. Internet connectivity, all businesses nowadays have internet connectivity. However, if you are supporting remote workers, you may need more bandwidth than what you have today. So that's something to definitely think about. There are several things like video conferencing that are going to tend to use more bandwidth than maybe what you're using today. So that definitely has to be looked at. Also, the internet connectivity for the remote workers can be a consideration. Internet is pretty commonly available in most places, but there are still some more rural areas that may have some limited access. There may be some additional costs or some build out that has to happen. If you've got somebody that's remote, I have an engineer that works in Muleshoe, and when she first moved out there, the connectivity was available, but it wasn't the best, so it took time to get a fiber build out to her area. So those are things that you've got to think about, and this is really more applicable to people that are going to work remotely more or less on a permanent basis. But in some cases it may be maybe something like a mobile hotspot. Most of the cellular carriers, AT&T, Verizon, can provide a box that acts as a cellular router that allows more mobile connectivity, or in areas where maybe a hardline type connection is not available. All businesses really need to have a business grade firewall. And when I mean by business grade firewall, I'm talking about a firewall that that's designed to work in a business environment, has some additional features, security features, as you might see in something like what's called a unified threat management appliance, or a next gen firewall is another term that you see out there. Unfortunately, what we see a lot of times with some of our smaller customers is that they'll go to Best Buy or wherever, and they'll get a $100 wireless router that has a firewall built into it. And when you're talking about protecting your home office, the hub of your environment, those devices are really not up to the task. They just don't have enough of the security features that you need. It's better than nothing, of course, but we would definitely recommend that you look at a true enterprise or a business firewall. The good news here is that we're not talking about thousands and thousands of dollars to do this. Many vendors, Fortinet, Cisco Meraki, SonicWall, there are several others. You can put in a firewall, easily for less than $1,000. We're not talking about huge money here, but the level of improvement that you'll get by having that is really worth the investment. And then the last thing I'll mention here is having good endpoint security. Endpoint security here, I'm talking about like a good antivirus product. Most Windows systems today come with Windows Defender by default. It's okay. I wouldn't consider it to be the best solution. It's free, so it's kind of, you get what you pay for. So there are lots of good, better endpoint security solution, antivirus solutions out there. We use a product called Silence, which we're very happy with. But there are others from Symantec, McAfee, Trend Micro, Sophos. There are several others there, and all of those would be an improvement over the basic Windows Defender. Also keep in mind that if you have employees working remotely, you've got to make sure and install that endpoint security on your remote endpoints. You can't just protect the systems in your office. You've got to protect the remote workers as well. And then Microsoft updates. Windows 10 is pretty good about I'll call it encouraging us to install the updates. So that's something that at a business level you can control and manage centrally. But you also have to consider how to make sure that your remote employees are getting their updates installed, because it doesn't do any good from an overall security threat management standpoint if your remote endpoints who are connecting to your business network, if they get infected, and then they can turn around and infect the main office network. And we've seen that happen over and over again over the last few years with things like crypto lockers and ransomware and things like that. So definitely need to address endpoint security and all the updates for your remote employees. Sorry, I had to get a drink there, getting dry. So there's a terminology out in in technology that's called BYOD, or bring your own device. So at a basic level, what BYOD was originally intended to do was some companies, typically larger companies, have taken the attitude of well, I'm not going to purchase laptops or devices for people. I'm just going to set up my infrastructure so they can go buy whatever it is that they want to buy. Might be a Surface, it might be a Mac, it might be whatever it is, and then they would bring it, and then you have the technology and the security setup that allows these non-company owned devices to interoperate on your network. But in this context, what I'm really referring to is how do you outfit the remote customer or the remote employees with the technology that they need to be able to work remotely. So there's really two approaches that you can look at here. One is the approach of, well, I'm just going to purchase whatever they, as a company, I'm just going to purchase whatever it is that they need. So those are going to be company-owned assets, going to be managed by the company, whatever processes that you might have in place to manage those. Obviously, there's going to be higher upfront costs to do that. So you've got hardware and and whatnot to get all that set up. So there's going to be some upfront time to get all that set up, but ultimately you're going to have better data security in that situation because you have control over that endpoint from a business perspective. So you can install your endpoint management solution. You can make sure that they're patched and updated because they're centrally managed and things like that. And besides, it's the company's device, so your policies can better dictate how that device gets used, as far as data storage and whatnot. So the other option here is to say, okay, I'm just going to set up my environment so that the remote employee can just use whatever they want to use. Maybe it's a system that they already have. Maybe their regular home computer or their home laptop. Obviously, there's going to be lower cost with that because you're not out that upfront investment. And there could be less administration to set that up, but there's going to be an increased support effort to do that because you don't know what all they've got installed on that. You don't know if their kids are using it to play games or whatever. So there's a level of variability there as far as how to deal with those systems where the configuration is pretty much an unknown quantity. And then obviously, you've got a greater security risk here because that system doesn't belong to the company. And then how do you manage it when they own it themselves? And I'll talk in a minute about how some technologies and some approaches to deal with both of these situations. Smartphones and tablets are pretty ubiquitous nowadays. Having BYOD for smartphones, Android, iPhone, tablets like iPads, even Surface, Microsoft Surface is another platform we see pretty frequently. That's much more common to see a BYOD. I haven't seen any customers purchase phones for their employees in quite a few years. And typically those that are running Android or iOS are typically a little easier to deal with. However, we have many customers that implement something that's called mobile device management, MDM for short. And MDM basically is software or something you would install on those devices that basically allows you to have better control over the company data, whether it's email or files or whatever, the company data that ends up on those systems. So definitely want to think about how to handle the employee smartphones. The first thing that we talk to customers about typically is how to facilitate access to your applications and your data for your employees that are working remotely. So you've got an employee, maybe they do this all the time. Maybe it's like now where they're ad hoc trying to figure things out and be able to work remotely. How do you run your business? How do you, from the standpoint of having access to your business applications, whether that's accounting or order processing or ERP or whatever that application happens to look like. So you gotta have a strategy in place for facilitating that. So there's been lots of talk over the last, really almost 10 years now, excuse me, about the cloud. And really what the cloud is basically the ability to move your applications and your data into a third-party environment where basically you're just using that more or less as a commodity. You're using those resources pretty much as a non-capital expenditure, more of a business expense, and you're not actually having to build the infrastructure, the servers or the data storage or whatnot on your network in order to run those applications. So in the instance of supporting remote workers, really having your applications running in the cloud, running external from your physical business premise is really an asset. It really puts you in a really good position. The customers that we have where they were already hosted, or maybe we're hosting their applications for them, when the whole stay-at-home orders came through, they were generally in pretty good shape already, because they're already kind of connecting remotely to those applications, because they're connecting to a third party to access those. So really, if you're running in the cloud, running whatever application in the cloud, then you're probably in a good position. If you're thinking about it, well, this might be the motivation that you need in order to make that step. Two areas where we've seen that the cloud applications really make sense. One is email. We see very, very few customers anymore that run their own email system. There are just so many options out there for hosted email. We have a hosted email solution. Microsoft through Office 365 has one. Of course, there's Google and on and on and on. I'm not going to sit here and try to rattle them all off because I would be here for the rest of the day. So, but running email in the cloud really makes sense. It really solves a lot of problems. So definitely want to look at that if you're not doing that already. File sharing is another area where the cloud services can make some sense. Google, Microsoft, Dropbox, CoNetrix has a product called ShareFile. All of those are really good solutions to facilitate sharing files, collaborating on documents and things like that. So if you're not already using those things, definitely want to consider or recommend that you start looking at those. However, be careful about the free solutions. We see a lot of customers that want to use the free version of Dropbox or want to use the free versions of Google Drive. Those concern me from a data privacy standpoint. You really don't have any skin in the game, so to speak, as far as a business relationship on how they're going to protect your data, whether it's encrypted, what rights do they have to your data, or rights to access your data. So definitely would steer somebody towards a paid solution there, and then also taking a good look at their security policies. So if you have an application that you want to run on premise, or you have to run it on premise, let's say that you have a inventory management solution that's part of your business, and there's really there is no cloud version of that. So basically, how do you interface with that application when people are working remotely? Well, there are a few options here. One of those is a technology that's really been around for quite a few years. It's called a virtual private network, or a VPN. So what a VPN is basically it lets somebody out on the internet, they really can be anywhere, set up an encrypted tunnel or an encrypted connection between that system and your home network. When I say home network, I'm really referring to your business network. And then basically that puts the remote system on the business network as if it were plugged directly into the network, or connected directly to the network there in your office. So can be a good solution for supporting remote users. There are some security concerns with this, primarily if the remote system is not a system that's company owned, because by that remote system connecting over the VPN, basically anything bad, whether it's a Trojan or malware or anything that's running on that remote system, basically once that tunnel's established, it's as if they brought that system in and plugged it straight into your network. So there's definitely some security concerns there. So we definitely don't recommend doing the VPN approach if if you want your remote employees to use their own systems. The risk is just too great. But it can be a good solution if you've got good management and good controls on company-owned systems. So another option is this idea of presenting a remote desktop to your remote employees. So what we're talking about here is that they would set up an encrypted session and basically be presented with a Windows desktop as if they were in the office, but they're not. There are some solutions there. Microsoft and Citrix have solutions to do that. Usually that involves installing a little bit of infrastructure at your business network in order to facilitate that. And the other would be what I'm calling a cloud-based solution. So this is something like LogMeIn, Join.me. There are several others out there. TeamViewer is one we see some. And those are basically, you've got a computer, maybe it's your desktop system that's sitting in the office, you're on a laptop sitting somewhere else, and then you go to LogMeIn and you authenticate yourself, and now all of a sudden you're remotely controlling the system that's running in the office. Both of those can be good solutions. A little bit better technology and security wise for non-company owned systems on the outside, because you're not forming a solid connection between the remote system and the home network. But there are some security considerations you need to think of. Again, I definitely, as it relates to things like LogMeIn or TeamViewer, definitely don't recommend going the free route there. Definitely want to look at a paid solution where you have a solid business relationship there from a security and privacy standpoint. We're seeing more and more businesses go to something that I'm calling here multi-factor authentication. Sometimes you see it as two-factor authentication. So that's basically adding another method to authenticate yourself other than a username and password. If you're a smartphone user, you may be using multi-factor with your fingerprint or a Face ID scan. So what multi-factor does is basically gives you an additional layer of security where you can be assured that the person connecting remotely is the person who's authorized, and not somebody who just managed to guess their password, or somebody that has a weak password that's easily cracked or easily guessed. So definitely want to take a look at multi-factor authentication. There are lots of solutions out there. We sell and support a solution called Duo from a company called Duo Security. But there are many others, and some of them are relatively inexpensive. But that allows you to have that higher assurance that the person connecting remotely is who they should be, and not somebody that's not allowed. Printing and scanning is always a challenge for remote users. If they need to be able to print remotely or scan remotely, I would say that printing and scanning probably ought to be reserved for those that more or less have a permanent remote office setup where you can put some infrastructure in place to handle that. But there are a couple of solutions out there available for remote scanning where they can scan documents, upload those, and things like that. So I'll talk briefly about phone services here. All of us have phones. Customers are accustomed to be able to call in when they need help, need assistance, whatever that needs to look like. And this is another situation where running your phone system in the cloud can provide some good benefits. Running cloud-based phone systems is a little bit more recent than some of the other solutions that I talked about. But a cloud-based phone system basically takes whatever phone hardware, except for the handsets. But historically, businesses have gone to a vendor and they brought in equipment and then tied your handsets into the phone server or some sort of phone equipment there in your office, with the ability of having the internet almost everywhere nowadays. You really don't have to have all the phone system stuff in your office anymore. The phones can connect directly to a server out in the cloud and be able to manage your phones that way. Some solutions that I've seen that are fairly common. Ring Central is one. 8x8 is another one that seems that we see a lot. That's pretty popular. So other than the avoiding the capital expenditure of maintaining a phone system, from a remote standpoint, what kind of advantages do you get? Well, really the biggest thing is that you get some business number transparency. So we see a lot of times where businesses, and you see this a lot with people that are out and about, people like salespeople, service people, that get in the habit of giving out their personal cell phone number. And so now you've got a personal cell number that may live beyond when that person no longer works for your company. And so what do you do without that? Well, if you have a cloud-based phone system, then you can install a what's called a soft phone or an application on their smartphone, or in some cases a PC or laptop, that basically allows that to act as a phone, so the only number that the customers need to have is the business number, and you avoid the problem of people giving out their cell phone numbers. So these voice applications, almost all the cloud vendors have this, where you can install an application on a PC or a smartphone and be able to answer the phone, talk, make calls, and all that happens as if you had a physical handset sitting in the office. So those are all things that can work really well for remote people. If you have an on-premise phone system, still possible to do to work. You just have a fewer options here. Of course, we've been able to forward phones forever, so that's really nothing new. Many carriers, whether it's AT&T or Suddenlink or whoever your local voice carrier is, can set it up so that you can start forwarding phones using a web browser. You would just go to their site and say, okay, I want to forward this phone to this other cell phone number or whatever, and things like that. So those are options. Some other considerations here. You still have to facilitate access to voicemail, remote access to voicemail. Many systems now will allow you to get voicemails as an attachment in emails, so those are nice to have. Auto attendant is a phone specific term, but basically an auto attendant is the menu that you get when you call into businesses here. Thank you for calling CoNetrix. Press 1 for this department. Press 2 for this department, so on and so forth. When you're particularly in a situation like we're in now, you have to look at how that auto attendant is routing calls, making sure that it's doing the things that you want to do. Still have some of our customers that are faxing. There are many cloud-based or remote fax solutions available. So someone that's sitting remote, as long as they have a scanner or a way to scan a document, they can send and receive faxes just fine. I think a lot of us forget that if you have a smartphone, we basically have a pretty good scanner walking around with us in our pockets. So I've seen some iOS applications that allow you to scan a document, convert it to PDF, and then fax it out directly from your phone. So those are things that are available nowadays. The last thing I'm going to talk about here is the meetings and collaboration. Like I said before, the ability to have meetings, video, audio, and to be able to collaborate, have discussions, be able to have the virtual equivalent of sitting around a conference room table or standing around the water cooler or talking in the break room. Those are all things that become a challenge when you've got a lot of remote employees. So the good news is that there's many solutions here to help facilitate that. I'm going to divide this kind of into two categories. You know, some features that I'm calling base features. These are features that almost every solution that you look at really ought to cover in some form or fashion. Audio conferencing, of course, being one of those. Messaging, that's the ability to be able to send secure, and I'm not talking about text messages like with your phone. I'm talking about a messaging platform where you can send messages, create group chats, things like that. Content sharing, like we're doing on this webinar, to be able to share your screen. Video conferencing has made huge strides over the last 5 years, as is evidenced by Zoom and some of the other platforms that we're going to talk about. And we see a lot of customers that really put a lot of emphasis on being able to see people's expressions, see people face to face. And then mobile device support is the ability to be able to use the meeting and collaboration solution from your smartphone or your tablet. So I'm going to call all those base features. Extra features, these are things that maybe you are not aware that are available, but might provide some additional functionality if they apply to your business. The ability to share files is one of those, to be able to post files into a chat and be able to review files that way. Applications, add-on applications. So the ability to have applications that support project management or any various numbers of applications. Single sign-on is the idea that when the username and password that you use when you sign into your computer is the same username and password that you use to sign on to the collaboration environment. So that's just help and administration. Calendar integration is one of those. So customers that are using Outlook have a calendar, and they'll be able to integrate that calendar in with the collaboration solution so that you can see meetings and manage them that way. And also integrate with your phone system so that the audio conferencing or the voice capabilities of your collaboration system work hand in hand with your phone system. So, and I'm not going to pretend to specify every solution here. I'm just going to hit the ones that are the most popular. So for base features, Zoom, like we're using right now, is a good solution. They've gotten a little bit of bumps the last month or two about some security problems. Hopefully they'll get those ironed out. GoToMeeting is another product that's been around for a long time. We see lots of customers using both of those, and I think they're both generally good solutions. So when you talking about some of those extra features that I mentioned before, really there's only two options that I'm aware of that kind of tick all those boxes. Microsoft Teams, which is what we use here at CoNetrix, is a part of their Office 365 or Microsoft 365 suite of products. So Teams has the chat and the file sharing and the applications and video and audio, and basically it ticks all the boxes are all the items that I have listed previously. Microsoft Teams is really an attractive financial option because it is included, I believe it's included in every Office 365 or Microsoft 365 plan. So if you're thinking about Office 365 or already have it, then you're already licensed for Teams. It just needs to be set up. Cisco WebEx has been around for a long time. WebEx meetings is still very popular. A couple of years ago, Cisco created a product called Cisco Spark, and they've now renamed that about a year or so ago to WebEx Teams. And it also has a lot of the same extra features that I'm talking about. Might make sense if you're already a WebEx customer, or maybe you're a Cisco Voice customer, you're using the Cisco Voice environment. Cisco phone system. WebEx is a logical add-on to that type of environment. So we've got a few minutes left here. Want to talk about some tips. These are things that we have learned with our remote workforce, things that we encounter frequently when we work with customers. And in the first section that I'm going to talk here is about having effective remote meetings. Having meetings where you're not when you're all connected over some form of technology can be a little bit of a challenge. So these are things that we have found that make those types of meetings as productive as they can be. One of those is having a defined leader, and that's having somebody that's running the meeting, that's making sure that everyone has a chance to speak if they need to speak. Basically creating an inclusive environment for everybody that's attending the meeting. If you're joining a meeting, it's important for everyone to identify themselves so they'll know who's joined the meeting, who's participating. Background noise is always a challenge, particularly if someone's on a mobile device, if they're driving down the highway or whatever. We always tell people, try to stay on mute if at all possible. That eliminates those distractions. People working from home, I'm sure everyone has run into situations where you hear a kid in the background or a dog barking or something like that. If it's an internal meeting, that may not be as big a deal, but may not be give your customers the type of impression that you want to give them if they're hearing a kid screaming in the background. So important to stay on mute. And then also just trying to be courteous and not talking over others. The technology is very good, but doesn't always support very well multiple people talking at the same time. So that's where part of where the defined leader comes in also, so that basically everyone knows that they're going to get a turn. Excuse me. So one thing that we have run into frequently is making sure that people invest in quality equipment. Excuse me, talking too much. So quality audio headsets, that's good earbuds, good microphones, good headphones, good web cameras. Those are all very important. Excuse me. Those are all very important in making sure that you get a quality experience. Earbuds, like what came with your phone, can be good in some situations, but if someone's sitting at a desk, really it's really worthwhile to invest in a good audio video setup. Not talking about huge money here. Most good webcams can be had for $100, maybe a little bit more. A lot of laptops come with the webcams built into them. Headphones, headsets, earbuds, can range in quality, but definitely want to invest in having good equipment there. And the last thing is just to be mindful of the security features of your various collaboration solutions, making sure you understand how the data is encrypted, whether it's encrypted in transit, encrypted at rest, making sure that you're handling the meeting hosts correctly, screen sharing, who can share their screen, who can't share their screen. You need to make sure that we have unique meeting passwords and not making those public. Been several instances over the last couple of months where the URL or the link to join the meeting it doesn't change for some folks, and so once that gets out there, then anybody that knows that link can join the meeting. And also, most of the features or most of the products have a feature to create a waiting area. I think Amy had that here with this Zoom meeting, basically just preventing those crashers, or I even heard a term for it the other day, Zoom bombing. You want to make sure that the people attending your meetings are the ones that were invited and not somebody that shouldn't be attending. So we're wrapping things up. Definitely want to keep security in the forefront of anything that you're doing with remote employees. Like most things with IT security, it becomes a balancing act of managing risk, cost, and complexity. You can have no risk, but it can be super complex and super expensive. So it's kind of a three-legged stool there. So definitely want to make sure you're thinking about those. Many of our financial customers will do something called a risk assessment, where they'll actually go through a defined process where they talk about each of the individual risks of various pieces of technology and what they're going to put in place to mitigate those risks. So something like that might be a worthwhile exercise. Every business is unique. What works for your business may not work for your friend down the street or your neighbor or whatever. So just keep in mind that everyone is going to be a little different. And then find you a partner if you need help. Whether it's somebody like us or somebody that you have in house. Just make sure that if you're getting help to implement some of these technologies, that they have experience and know how to implement a lot of the technologies that we've talked about. All right, so we're to the question phase. Got a few minutes, hopefully, to cover everything.
Yeah, that was great, Rob. Thank you so much for all that great information. So we do have the chat portion on the side open if anybody has any questions for Rob. And Rob, if you just wanted to share your email address in case people have additional questions, if you'll do that in the chat portion as well. Oh, there you go. You got it ready to go. Good deal. Yeah, that way if they have questions for you or they think of something, when you wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and you have the best thoughts, then they can reach out to you either by cell phone, office, or email address. So that's great. We appreciate you being with us today. I don't see any questions coming through. I think you covered everything very thoroughly, and we do appreciate that. I just have a few closing remarks. If the question does pop up, then we'll go back to it. If your calendar allows you to this afternoon, we do have a 2 p.m. webinar. That is the Lubbock's Economic Recovery Task Force Guideline Update, and that'll be at 2. And I've got the link here in the chat box. If you wanted to copy and paste that into your browser, then you can register for that event. Should be a good one. I think we've got Councilman Steve Massengale that will be sitting through that with us. So be great, some great information to fill all you business owners and operators in on what you look forward to in the next few weeks opening back up again. Also visit our new recovery resource website. It is in this together lbk.com. And there's some great resources, jobs on there. If you're looking for any PPEs for your business in the coming weeks, we've got some great resources, links, people that are selling things that may be of use to you and your business. So with that, I don't see any questions that have come through. Rob, thank you again to you and CoNetrix for being with us this morning and to reaching out to us to provide this information to our chamber members. We appreciate that. So on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and staff, we thank you for being with us today. Please visit our website for additional webinars. We've got some useful information out there. We've got a little bit of everything for everybody. So thank you so much, Rob. And you have a great afternoon and hope to see you all soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.